Today I had a really good chat with our JLL Flex design team. So a lot of talent in that team that helps us with our layout diagrams, our test fits, our look and feel, even mapping the customer journey of what a co-working or a flex customer could be, whether they're a tenant in the building or a direct customer of the co-working space. And they work very closely with our flex ops team, right? So the people in charge of hiring and managing the staff, filling the space, blah, blah, blah. And there's always a few things that we go through. Today we kind of solidified that this is almost going to be a checklist that we put in front of landlord clients or our team before any new sites. It's kind of obvious, but sometimes I feel like my job is to make the obvious really simple to understand and synthesize for anyone out there trying to create a flex space or a co-working space themselves, whether you're a landlord client or you're trying to franchise or create your own as a business, which, is a thing in this very hybrid orientated officey world. So let's get started. There's three things that I want to go through, and I've broken it up into this diagram. There's the site context, which we'll start with, customer context, so who you're targeting, and then the personas that you have within your space, okay? So from a site context perspective, almost think of have to have the pen set on, your site, so X marks the spot, almost matrix it out. What other amenities or co-working spaces are surrounding that? Because this will help you figure out what's the differentiator for your space and what makes it unique. So for example, I think right now what would be really great for any new co-working space to put in as an extra amenity is a media studio. So a bit more than a podcast studio. Where can someone not just record audio content, but also video content? Because that's something that's a bit industry agnostic. Everyone's creating content now, right? To humanize their brand, be authentic, and to get their product out there. That's something that I think is really important because there's no media studios really out there within a co-working or an office environment. So if you suddenly have it within your space, that could be something that differentiates your space. It doesn't mean you have to brand it the media co-working space, but by having a facility like that, immediately you could raise eyebrows or justify it doesn't even have to be a creative agency, a company that has a marketing team that will kill to have access to that space and book it ad hoc within it. The site context is important because if you start looking at more generic amenities like a wellness space, an event space, but there's 6 surrounding locations around your new site that has all of those things, you just got to ask yourself, what are you doing differently, to make it special in your space? So site context, right? And I think it's important to always go through that exercise. Customer context is the next one. It's like, what's your target demographic? And I don't mean just in the co-working space. I also mean, from a tenant community perspective. Because this could help decide whether, if you want to look at putting an event space within your co-working space, is an open plan, really informal style event space all you need, because that also helps you design it within your layout. Or do you need something super private and secure, right? Because the tenant community within that building, they all need an event space, which they don't have within their own tenancy, but they need it to be secure because of the type of stuff that they're presenting. So they'd rather have some place that they could literally have sectioned off or, blocked out so they can put sensitive information up there. Versus a community of customers that actually would really much prefer just having the event space open up and bleed into the communal area, so they get to take over that space and almost activate the whole thing, because they're using that event space more for informal celebrations, whether it's celebrating milestones, non-sensitive information, onboarding people, all that kind of stuff. From a customer context, it's important to think, what do they want? So that's the event space example. But if you're targeting, law firms or tech companies that have highly sensitive information, how are you going to, even address that security concern within your co-working space? And often or not, it can be addressed by simply positioning it somewhere differently within your floor plan, right? It doesn't have to go, Air Force One style security, but it could be certain rooms or meeting spaces you put within the floor plan so that even from a entry perspective, they can kind of get there without, the whole floor plan seeing who's arriving and whatnot if they want a level of security there. So customer context is important. And by doing the site context and customer context stuff, it also demonstrates, and this is if you're trying to get this thing approved, you've done a certain level of due diligence on what kind of products you need to put in within this co-working space, right? Because this content here, when I say design drivers, it'll be more useful for you if you're either a white label operator creating something from scratch, or you're a landlord trying to tailor your own product offering, right? If there's operators out there watching it that has their brand, has their layout, less important because you've kind of got your formula that you're going to stick to, right? Customer journeys, I think, is a really important one and something that often gets overlooked because it seems really simple, right? A co-working customer and a flex customer, that's persona one. There's actually a bunch, I've only got a list for here, but there's a bunch of personas out there. And they're really differentiated like almost by casual versus permanent. I'm almost going to split them up that way. Went up there. And by that, I mean, is this persona someone who's going to live in the space essentially, or is it someone who just uses it on an ad hoc basis? So for example, the first one could be like a hot desk user. So these are the open plan dedicated desks that you sell month to month, right? You may not have a lot within your floor plan, but I think it's important to include because not only is it a good design consideration to help your floor plan breathe sometimes, rather than just having a ton of private offices, but even those suite and private office users, when they have guests in town who don't necessarily want to sit within that enclosed space, but can kind of go work from an open plan desk, it's always nice. It also helps with the community feeling. I'll start with the personas first. I'll list 4 so you can kind of, stew on that and marinate on that, and then I'll kind of go into arrival and day of the life examples. A second user, this is your private office user or your suite user. So that's more of a permanent one, right? That when you think about that customer, they're going to be in your space a lot more than a hot desk user, right? Maybe 3 days a week. They're going to live within that private office and they're probably going to be in the space way more to experience different types of activations and stuff. That's more of a permanent user. I'll have your meeting rooms. Meeting room user, similar to hot desk user, they may be booking it ad hoc or in the area, or they might be a tenant within the building, right? And they come down to that space to use the meeting rooms. And the last one I'll kind of use as an event space or the sizzle customer. So this customer either is just coming because they've been invited to an event, whether you as an operator are hosting something special, whether it's a quarterly or monthly thing that you like to blast out to the precinct, or it's a sizzle customer, meaning if you've got something special within your floor plan that will help differentiate your space, like the media room example I used earlier, they're coming to use that, okay? So you've almost got these 4 users, let's say, and you've got you've got 3 casuals and 1 permanent. I'm going all over the place with the iPad today. I mustn't have locked it properly or something. Normally, it doesn't go up and down. It stays still, but my fat thumbs keep messing it around. So when you go into the arrival column and the day in the life, it's really important from a design angle when you think of each of these users, what is their arrival experience meant to feel like or be? What's your intention, right, as an owner and an operator? It's almost like, and we don't have to go through every single one in detail, but a hot desk arrival is going to be very different to a private office arrival, right? Because a hot desk arrival, it might be, rubbed that out, guys, sorry. It might be a first time or fleeting, so as a hot desk customer, when you come in, you may have booked it for the day or you may only use it once a week. Where are those hot desks going to be within your floor plan, right? There's no point having it in a very confusing area or hidden, deep into the layout of your co-working or flex space if they're not necessarily meant to be experts within the location because they're a casual user. So where is that going to go? Similarly, the day of the life, when you think of a hot desk user, maybe that day of the life within the floor plan is restricted to a certain NLA, of that floor plan because they may not have access to all of the other stuff like a more permanent user. Okay, so you almost think about when you do your layout, a hot desk user, what is that experience going to be like from arrival to day in the life? And what are the benefits of doing that? Because everyone that comes in and uses a hot desk, if you do it properly, they're essentially a walking flyer for your space if they have a great experience, if they enjoy it. And yeah, sure, they might graduate and buy a private office at some point. Or you could have a referral program. If they use the space and they like it and they want to represent the brand, and you hit them with referral programs, and then they go tell a friend or someone within their network who buys an office because they're incentivized by some sort of commission structure. You also want that to, you got to think about all these things, right? It's not just as simple as they only pay for a day pass or once a month. I don't care about that individual. You need to think about the whole thing. From a more permanent example, the private office suite customer, arrival, obviously concierge, but also self-service. When I say concierge, even though they're permanent and it's more of a self-service route, which is what I wrote the second one, where you can almost have entryways where they don't want to deal with everything because it's their home. They know it. They can go the back doorway or whatever. Retention is so important for these customers. You still need to consider what their arrival is so that they can have a really nice experience with your concierge or your community manager, right? How do they feel remembered? How do they feel connected to the space? So yes, it's important that they can access their office in a way that they don't want to be bothered, because sometimes they just want to get work done. But also, how do you have the arrival experience still with an element of surprise and delight, a bit of fun, a bit of human connection, okay? And the day in the life, they have a way more intimate day in the life within the space than any of these other users, because they're there almost every day. But again, really important, because what are all the touch points within the layout, aside from just going to their office? Where's the kitchenette area or the breakout space if they want to fill up water or get coffee? Where's the informal areas if they want to break away from their private office? Where's their private office? What's that journey looking like? Super important for a retention example, right? And meeting room, similar to a hot desk, but someone who books a meeting room, you almost have to think about if they book it on a platform or if they're referred, they may have less of a idea of what's going on in the space than even a hot desk user, right? So are the meeting rooms located somewhere super located close to the concierge? Because they also have an element of serviceability required, right? So operationally, if they're all grouped together, and of course you'll have some close to the offices upstairs for the users who live in the space and don't want to be bothered, but how are they serviced easily? Or how do they get to them easily whilst having a good experience? So it's almost like, think about that, locate them appropriately. Day in the life, it's almost limited to that area. So how can this meeting room amenity area be elevated? Whether it be from design, signage, lighting, what are the little things that you can also do to pepper in a great experience that they can walk away and talk about it more or book again? Because meeting room revenue is great, but it's per hour, it's ad hoc, it's not 6 to 12 month licenses plus. And the last one, users from an event space and everything. When you think about it, and I'll just put this here across both tiles, the whole point that they're going to your space is for an experience. They're not going there to work or have a meeting. They're literally going there to experience something. So I always think it's fun to figure out if they're going there for an experience and they're ready for that, and there's a bit of playfulness there too, what else can you do on their arrival, their day in the life within that event space to just make it a bit more fun and playful? How can you add experience to the experience? It's kind of like potentially a horrible analogy, but unboxing a phone or something when you buy it. Even the unboxing of that experience is awesome. There's full-time jobs dedicated to how a unboxing experience should be. Imagine if you had someone who had a full-time job, not saying there needs to be, but it could be part of someone's KPI or something, where, okay, if someone's coming to an event space within my space or my sizzle room, like the media room, how do we make sure that experience, even arriving, they have an experience before their experience? Just food for thought. So hopefully that was helpful, but I think these things all contribute to a successful design. Obviously, there's commercial drivers that are important, but here are some other design drivers that we think about and we're going to start paying more attention to for new sites, I think, in terms of the creativity and the nicheness of how we approach that. So good luck.